Let's move on to talking about Chat GPT. And we've got Chat GPT being banned from New York City public school devices and networks. So this is where we're actually going to bring in our guest to talk about this story. Before we have Darshak Patel come in here, let's talk just real briefly about the story to kind of set the stage for Darshak. So what has happened here is ChatGPT has been released. The full power of ChatGPT is kind of being put on display, and people are starting to panic a little bit, especially educators. So what we've done is we reached out to some of our past educators. So we've got Darshak Patel that's going to join us to talk about this. And we just are wanting to have a conversation about what should it look like for education to have a relationship with artificial intelligence, and specifically with Chat GPT. So as you can see here in this article, this is being banned because the quote from this says, while the tool may be able to provide quick and easy answers to questions, it does not build critical thinking and problem-solving skills, which are essential for academic and lifelong success.
Yeah, I think this was a panicked decision. This is very, very fast of a kind of a way to address this for a school. It's only been out for about 2 months. Chat GPT was launched in November. So I don't really like how the school system here is addressing it this way so quickly. I think that the way to think about tools like this is if humans are paid in relation to the value that they put out into the world, and there's a tool like Chat GPT that can increase that value that they're able to bring into the world and do it more quickly, then banning something like Chat GPT is against the best interest of the students. Because Chat GPT can enable them to have more mental bandwidth to do other things than memorize, what you might traditionally memorize in school. It might not be in a student's best interest to write certain types of essays that traditionally are heavy memory focused. GPT can alleviate that. That might not be valuable. And so the main thing that I look at Chat GPT and think about is, really what it's going to do is challenge us on what is valuable intelligence. When we create new intelligence via artificial intelligence, what kind of intelligence should humans care about? And I think that's what schools need to be really focused on and think about. And so let's hear what some of these professors, especially Darshak, think about this.
Yeah, so we're going to have Darshak Patel, who's a senior lecturer and director of the economics department at the University of Kentucky. He's one of my favorite past professors that I had while at the University of Kentucky. So let's have him join here. We should get him live here in just a second. Darshak, welcome to the first live-streamed Middle Tech podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Logan Evans. Great things you're doing with Middle Tech, so excited to be here.
Man, you look like you're well-prepared, too. You got that full headset on. You look like a professional already.
I needed to be. You guys have a very professional setting, so I needed to keep up with you all.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us. Like we just kind of mentioned there, we wanted to start talking to educators about their perspective on Chat GPT and kind of what this means for educators and for the education system. It's going to be a pretty uncomfortable thing to try and figure out how to deal with this. So just to kick us off here, why don't you start by talking a little bit about, what concerns you most about what you're seeing with ChatGPT, and then we can just kind of have a free-flowing conversation around how this pertains to colleges, to high schools, and to educators in general.
Sure, yeah. It's been a pretty big shock in terms of when it just first came out and how the growth, and you guys highlighted a little bit about it on your social media about the growth of ChatGPT compared to the other tech industry out there. I'm one of the few educators who actually think who sees more benefits than costs at the point on ChatGPT. A concern that I do have right now is that a lot of people don't realize there's a lot of misinformation that comes out of ChatGPT. So ensuring that is already put out there for people who are using it to ensure that, hey, not everything that's coming out of here that's being generated is reliant. And then a lot of the stuff that is written through ChatGPT as terms of the auto-responsive generated responses, the collective writings of humans across the world from past, present, and that means there's a lot of bias that's going to come in. And so you have to be really worrisome about the idea that it may hold some gender and racial bias and lead to a lot more misinformation and taken as is. So that's my biggest concern. But if you provide the right tools and resources for both educators and students, we can elevate those concerns as well.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned there right at the beginning the growth of ChatGPT. So I pulled up this little graph that kind of shows how quickly ChatGPT actually had 1 million users. It took them 5 days, which is wild. You can see here it compares that to Instagram's 75 days and Spotify's 150 days. But Evan, that's something you've talked a lot about as well, is how significant that growth really is.
Yeah, I mean it's super important because this is such a complex technology, and what they've done, and really the innovation here is how they made it so easily consumable and used by everyday people. You know, we're interacting with some of the most advanced technology that's ever been created via what feels like a text message thread. That's a huge innovation. That's the biggest innovation really to happen to artificial intelligence to this point. And that growth is kind of showing that when you create an interface that allows people to engage with it and something they're familiar with, that growth speaks for itself. So you're basically just opening up the opportunity for anybody to use and have access to artificial intelligence. That's the really big innovation here and why it's so important that those growth numbers are being shown. And it grew faster than, as you can see there, Instagram and so many other technologies that we use daily. And so what does that mean for the future of how often we'll use Chat GPT is really kind of the question to think about there.
Yeah, and Darshak, talk a little bit about, what, if anything, excites you about this technology. Have you started thinking about how this is going to impact specifically, college courses and college education? There are a lot of things to be excited about, but I think we're still so early in it that it might be hard to see some of those things. So, talk about any use cases or things that have you excited.
Yeah, definitely. I think that if some of your listeners have not tried it, it's great to go and play around with it. You'll learn a lot in terms of how it works and what you can get out of it. I'm just excited about a lot of unlimited potential opportunities that will come out of this. We spend so much time trying to get started with certain projects or coming up with an idea in terms of what's the next assignment to give to students, or what could be the next project, or even getting your student organizations and saying, hey, let's talk about your first cover letter, your first resume. This provides a great starting point. You can just put in a few words in terms of what you're looking for and saying what ChatGPT can guide you in terms of what your first starting point is and what your first idea is. The time that's going to be saved has great positive implications. We always think about how technology can help us improve, progress, create more growth. This will help us in terms of saving time. I'll give you a couple of examples. I've written a lot of letters of recommendations, and I teach large lectures of 500 students, get lots of requests. I have to rethink about how many times I rewrite something, the new words to use. So I had an opportunity to try this and see if I could write a letter of recommendation for someone to go to law school. And it spit out a really good letter of recommendation, but it did not have a personal touch. So I still had to go in there, tweak it as much as possible to make it personal, to provide examples of the student in terms of why they would be a great fit for the law school. But it gave me a starting point, and that saved me so much time. I'll give you another example. Last night I was writing a report, and I put in a huge set of data, my summary statistics data, into this. It gave me trends. It wrote out really good trends, but it wasn't accurate. I had to go in and double check the numbers, and the numbers were not accurate. So I still had to go fix things. So your critical thinking skills will still have to come into play if you want to write a polished assignment or polished presentation to whatever assignment your faculty member has provided. So we can think about lots of examples: resumes, cover letters, writing reports, which a lot of elementary school and high school teachers will usually spend so much time writing. It'll help with that. Will help with a lot of learning disability, be able to write lesson plans. So just lots of opportunities with this.
How does this affect your ability to assess a student's knowledge for tests, or written essays? Are you going to have them, come into the classroom and do it live and see that they're actually, writing it themselves? I've read that some teachers are considering, doing that and going more to in-person assessment. How are you thinking about reacting to this, or how have you heard others thinking about reacting to this as it becomes part of, answers?
The beauty of markets is that whenever there's a problem, there's always a solution. And if you do some recent Google searches, there's some AI detectors, and you can copy and paste exactly what the student has written and put it on this AI detectors. It'll actually tell you what the match was that it came out from, an AI response versus a natural response. Even if you tweak it, it gives you a good idea whether it came from AI, because the words that the words that it generates, the response it generates, uh, doesn't have that human touch in it. Yes, there's some cases it does, but when you write up your assignment to have some critical thinking, analysis, responses, it misses that aspect of it. So when a lot of students start using this, it would be easier for a faculty member, teacher, to figure out that, hey, look, I've seen a lot of similarities in a lot of responses from a lot of students. There's something going on as well. And of course, then students also have to redo this over assessment, over exams, and so on. And this will not translate easily into those as well. So I think that the schools can provide more resources to teachers and students on how to use this more positively than being scared of this. I think we can go back, and again, it's not my time. I can't remember what was going on at that time. But when internet came into our world, I bet there were similar, uh, I guess, reactions to this in terms of being scared and not knowing and being vulnerable about new technology.
Yeah, I think that's important to keep in mind is like this is a really disruptive new technological advancement. And there's going to be a lot of confusion, a lot of panic reactions to this. So this is all kind of part of the process of figuring out, where this new technology fits into our society, fits into education, and all those sorts of things. And I mentioned at the beginning of this, we've gotten a couple different opinions on this, and I'm gonna read off a quote from actually my high school English teacher. She was one of the more influential teachers that I had going through high school. So I reached out to her on Instagram, asking to get a quote from her. So this is Karen Scalf from Paul Blazer High School in Ashland, Kentucky. So she was one of the best English teachers that I had. She says, "My biggest concern is that deep and focused thinking will diminish. I'm more worried than excited about it as a teacher of reading and writing. If it can finish your sentences, write your essays, and give you notes to study that you didn't take, at the very least, it's a different way of thinking. If students aren't having to wrestle with just the right word choice or how to untangle complex concepts through writing about them, then will they still develop those critical thinking skills? Other teachers are considering going to in-class handwritten essays, while some plan to teach students to use AI responsibly. I don't think schools banning it is the answer, but it will take a monumental team effort by each school to decide how to approach the process, how to approach the access to it." Yeah. I've seen the breakdown of teamwork with some teachers and admin not doing their part, which carries over to the classrooms that are. Yeah. I think she nails it there. I think the one thing I want to pull out before I hand it over to you, Evan, is that when she says it's a different way of thinking. I think that's one of the most important parts here. Yeah. It's fundamentally shifting the mental process you have to go through when learning. Like you almost have to change the way that you learn and make sure that you're still getting those critical thinking skills while using this as a tool. So what are your thoughts on that quote?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I've been trying to get people to realize about artificial intelligence is when you go down the artificial intelligence path and you take it as far as you can, really all we're doing is asking ourselves ultimately what is real intelligence and what does it mean to be human? I mean, when you extrapolate it out as far as it goes, and we recreate to some extent what we think makes us special, which is our intelligence and questioning what consciousness really is. These technologies can advance to the point that we really have to figure out what that means. And we really don't know. We don't even know where consciousness comes from. And so these kind of, to that point, what are we going to have to do to change our thinking? That's what's so exciting to me as far as artificial intelligence goes, is it's going to actually force us to answer some questions, or at least ask them in different ways about what is intelligence and what are we as humans that make us unique. And so it's going to first show its head in schools, which is where we develop our intelligence and our consciousness over time really starts to come from, is our interactions with how we learn. So I also reached out to my friend, Tom Martin, who's the dean of the College of Business at EKU. He said he reached out and said he just was trying to urge his faculty there at the school to be proactive, be on the offense versus defensive like this. I think that is a great point that the faculty and the executives at these colleges and schools need to be thinking about is how can we be proactive versus defensive. And he also said this was kind of unique. He saw in a recent article that a scholar wrote That's going to take maybe 10 years for academia to react to this new reality, 2 years for students to figure out how to use the tech. It might be sooner than that. 3 years for professors to recognize that students are using this tech regularly, and then maybe 5 years for the university administrators to decide what to do about it. That's a lot of time. And by the time 10 years goes by, Chat GPT and these artificial intelligence technologies will be probably unrecognizably more advanced. So that they're going to have to figure out. Everybody's going to have to figure out how to react faster to this. And again, this only came out about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and schools are already having to react. So I think that timeline is probably going to be accelerated. But I just thought that was a unique point that Tom brought up. That is how schools think about it. Is first they've got to see what is out there and are students using it, and then how should we react to how students use it, and then how long is it going to take us to implement, and what are those steps? I think that's just a good point that Tom brought up.
Yeah, Darshak, do you have any final points you want to make about ChatGPT and how schools should be reacting to it in the short term? Because this is obviously something, like Evan just said, that is going to take some more planning, some more thought before you really make a long-term change. So if you have any final thoughts around how schools can adapt, we'd love to hear those.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one, give it time to see how it plays out. You just have to learn a little bit more about it, and of course, we don't have 10 years or 2 years in this short time period. And then also, once you learn a little bit about it, trying and providing the right resources for faculty. One, teachers can actually use this to provide creative assessment, where they can even look at a paragraph that came out of an auto-generated responses from AI and say that, okay, what's wrong with this? Let's critically think about each sentence that was posted out up here and see how we can write better off that. So there are ways to kind of think about how to push students to learn those skills that a lot of educators think they're going to get missing once they start using this AI. And then also provide the tools for students as well in terms of how to effectively and more positively use ChatGPT or any AI related programs out there that would really help them also I guess in one pace to look at all the opportunities that it provides as well. So basically, give it time, and with time, also provide the right resources for both training teachers as well as training students. I know here at University of Kentucky we have the CELT, and we already have started providing training to teachers in terms of how effectively to use that as well. So yeah, those are my last thoughts on that. Yeah,
that's good to hear. I know one of my last kind of take on this, and I call myself an optimistic futurist. So I always try to think of the positives that could come from this. I immediately think, and some friends and I have been discussing around what this means for essentially having like a personalized tutor that is software based. You can go in and you can, and this is not even connected to the internet yet, which I feel like is an important point to make. You mentioned that it still has some misinformation that might pop up on it. And now Microsoft is planning on integrating this into their Bing search engine. When you connect this to the internet and you can truly get, a search engine-like experience that is presented to you in the way that ChatGPT functions, you can essentially ask it about any topic that you want to and then have it explain it to you at any level of complexity that you want to. And I think that's the most important part of this. That's the most exciting part of this when it comes to education, is now students are able to learn in a much more customized way through the assistance of artificial intelligence. So Darshak, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your thoughts here. It's been awesome to have you on and listen to kind of what's been talked about at the college level. So appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.